what one element of all of the pop culture that I talk about in the book is that, you know, these characters, these artists have a sense of organic popularity as well. You know, they're not people who are contrary to what one would imagine, or contrary to what one would suspect. They're not people who are, you know, sort of created by the Hindu right wing, or funded and sort of told to grow by the BJP or the RSS or any of these organizations.
This is the story of Kavi. So how she...
Yeah, you know, so Kavi is really the perfect example. She is someone who delivers cosmetic treatments. She is, you know, she's a beautician. She's working at a beauty parlor in a small town in Haryana. And then one day she's cooking food and she's humming a song like some of us do. And you know, her father, who's a Haryanvi singer, he just happens to catch her in that moment and he says, "Arey beta, tu to ga sakti hai." And you know, the next thing we know is the next morning, Kavi is in the studio recording a song just to see if she can sing or no. And in modern technology, Gopal, is a beautiful thing because it can make people like me singers as well. You know, so what essentially happens is she goes into the studio and then, you know, auto-tune and a bunch of other technologies help her achieve that sort of perfect melody in the voice, and she becomes a singer. Right, so there is no external force which is driving her to become a singer. There's no RSS or the BJP or the VHP coming and saying, "Oh, you should become a singer." What happens is there's the Pulwama terror attack that happens in 2019. This is, and she's just discovered that there's a singer inside her. And you know, in the days after the terror attack, we're all sort of angry, we're outraged, we're confused, we're wondering, you know, how this could happen, especially under the watch of a government that sort of prides itself in being the custodians and the guardians of the country. And then we're asking questions about who could have done this, right? But Kavi has a very different take on it. She gets a poem which is written by a fellow poet, and the poem is not asking any of these questions. The poem is essentially saying, you know, leave Pakistan, leave the terrorists, leave all of these people aside. The people who've actually created this situation and the people who actually carried out this terror attack are essentially the Muslims living amongst us. That is the rhetoric that the song employs, right? And at this point, there is no RSS, there is no PHP, nothing at all. And she decides to go ahead with the song, and that is how her first song comes into being. And then that song catapults her into you know, a different league of fame, where overnight she becomes a sensation of sorts. You know, people are lip syncing. This is on YouTube. People are lip syncing to her songs. People are making their own cover versions of it, and so on and so forth. So this is a very organic birth of Kavi Singh the artist, which is why, you know, I didn't want to fall into the liberal trap of blaming everything on the Hindu right wing or the BJP or the RSS. Or YouTube. I think it's essential for us to understand that there are various ways in which the Hindutva pop culture is also growing. And like Kavi's song's popularity tells you, there's a vast audience among us who enjoy this kind of pop culture, who want to consume this kind of pop culture, right? So as I said, the lazy way out would be to blame it on the organized Hindu right wing. But I've chosen to not sort of do that and look at the more organic ways in which they've also grown, while of course on the way in the journey, getting some help from the BJP and the RSS and its many affiliate organizations, where one sees that as soon as some of these pop stars become popular, you know, these organizations start sort of giving them platforms and saying, "Oh, okay, you know, clearly you're doing well. Why don't you come and perform at our rallies? You know, and why don't you come and address our troops?" So that is the kind of symbiosis that happens between these two worlds.
You also mentioned that many of these songs, like Kavi Singh, people might not follow Kavi Singh, but people are making remixes of it, or people are, DJs are playing it in different things. So how does this economy work? Like, who are these people? I assume they are also fans who are doing their own version of the fan thing. So how does this entire, because here we don't get to meet these people, but you've seen them. Who are these people?
So what's fascinating about this sort of Hindutva pop culture is that, you know, these songs are not meant for one occasion alone. So there can be songs that, as I said, you can play while you're in a public bus, which is what happens immensely in places like UP and Jharkhand where I've seen this happen. There can be songs that can be your caller tunes, they can be your ringtones. Incidentally, when I first sort of discovered Hindutva pop, the driver who was ferrying me around was this one Bajrang Dal worker in Jharkhand, and he was the driver, and his song was this sort of anthem of Hindutva pop. It was a song called Har Ghar Bhagwa Chayega, Ram Rajya Fir Aayega, Ek Hi Nara, Ek Hi Naam, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram, and so on and so forth. So this was his caller tune, and I would wake up every day, calling him up and sort of listening to the song every single day at the start of my day. So that's one version of the song. But a big bulk of where these songs also get utilized are these massive processions, Gopal. Which are these Ram Nami processions that happen in places like Jharkhand, especially. Jharkhand and Bihar have a history of massive Ram Nami processions, consisting of anywhere between tens of thousands of people to hundreds of thousands of people also. And I'll show you some videos if you're able to. But it's just that sort of scale of the processions where these songs then get employed, because this is really what keeps the crowds mobilized, keeps them roused with the feelings of Hindutva, the feelings of sort of having another to blame, creating a victim out of minorities, creating a victim out of critics, and so that is a big arena in which Hindutva pop performs, and sort of I would say that is one big function of Hindutva pop, to keep all of these crowds going. Where to give you an example, one of the songs that is very popular in this world is this song that is often played in front of mosques in these Ram Nami processions, right? And then typically what would happen is that these processions would sort of snake their way through and stop right in front of the mosque in any of the towns that you go to. And while they're stopped there is when they would play some of the most potent Hindutva pop songs. One of them being, Agar Chua Mandir to Tujhe Dikha Denge, Tujhko Teri Auqat Bata Denge, right? So it's literally standing outside the mosque, and Ram Nami, if you guys are not aware, in places like these is also a form of Shakti Puja. So what would happen is that the processionists are carrying swords, they're carrying sticks, they're carrying rods with them, and then sort of waving them while they cut across the town. And especially when it comes in front of the mosque is when this song is played and when all of these guys are roused. So each time this happens is sort of one time that you're very, very close to an incident happening, right? It could be a riot, it could be a clash, it could be anything. And the best case scenario would be that it just stokes tensions and then the procession goes away. But the tensions remain. And unfortunately in situations like these events really don't make it to the news, especially when you're talking of smaller towns and stuff. So that is the primary function of some of these songs, Gopal.
So the first half of the book, the first story is about the singer. Then you get into the poet, and then you have the publisher, and you talked about this the myth making. So what is the H in H book? Is it Hinduism like we know it? Is it Hindutva or is it Hindi? And your book gives paints.
Or it could be hate.
It could be hate.
Is what someone said.
Yeah. No, but this whole thing about the Hinduism that you write over there is not the traditional one with caste and the one Hinduism that we know here in Maharashtra. It's a different it's got a single male god, Ram, and stuff like that. And there's this mythology that is being created by Kamal and by the other person. What is this mythology? Are people lapping it up, or is the old Hinduism forgotten, and are we seeing something new? What is your...
So I think we're seeing a continuation of what we've seen from, say, the early 20th century when sort of the Hindu nationalist movement started getting organized. And then there were these sort of, as I call it, the myth creation around the Muslim, the Christian, all of these religions. And then since then, they've, the number of enemies that the custodians of Hindutva fight have only grown, right? One day it could be the farmers, one day it could be students in JNU and so on and so forth. But essentially what remains the basic theme in this pop culture is that Hinduism and Hindus are in danger. Right? The classic Hindu khatre mein hai. And that becomes sort of the point at which you return and sort of that's the point of origin, but that's also the destination in some ways for most of this. Be it the songs, be it the poetry, be it the books. The idea is to constantly reiterate and reinforce that that Hindus are facing the threat of extinction, the threat of a demographic takeover in some ways, the threat of Hindu girls and women being taken away by Muslims. So it all sort of revolves around these enemies that Hinduism has. And for instance, Sandeep Dev, who's the publisher in the book, he likens himself to be this cultural warrior. He says it's not enough to fight Islam and Christianity. Who's going to fight Netflix? Who's going to fight Amazon? I will fight Amazon. I will fight Netflix. And I said, but what are they doing? And he's saying it's very clear. You look at the OTT content that they're sending to our bedrooms. This is a conspiracy by the Vatican in his view, where they're sort of presenting alternative ways of families to coexist, right? So you're looking at independent women. You're looking at sometimes broken marriages. You're looking at families which have conflicts, and for people like Sandeep, this is a sign that it's a Western conspiracy to try and shake Indian values off, right? Where the woman was supposed to be at home taking care of the kids, was supposed to make her kids religious and devotional, but now the woman has started going out. She started working. She doesn't care. The family is in disarray, and so Sandeep is saying this is not what Indian society was ever like. And this for him is a sign that the West is trying to get Western ideas and Western concepts of life into the Indian sphere. So he is now, in his rhetoric, in his work, he's constantly sort of telling Hindus that you should not be watching all of this. You should not be watching Netflix. You should not be watching Amazon. Don't watch OTT. And one of his distant dreams is to create an OTT platform where people can watch, sort of Hindu-friendly content. So this is why the creation of enemies is a very essential part of Hindutva, because without enemies, Hindutva will not sort of stand. A lot of people ask me, and I was in Hyderabad last week, and then they said, oh, but now the Ram Mandir is built. What next? Do we sort of consider this to be the end of the struggle? And I said it can't be. It can't be, because without struggle there is no rousing, there is no mobilizing, there is no making you feel angry and feel threatened. So when Ram Mandir ends, you will have Gyan Vapi, right? And we've already seen, and then once you have Gyan Vapi, you will have Mathura, and then the list goes on and on. So this creation of enemies is a very important tactic in the Hindu right-wing ecosystem.
Actually, my question was, how do they maintain the hate? And you answer the question that you had the farmers.
Yeah.
Then I don't know who's the current.
So the India Alliance is quite doesn't need much targeting, but yeah. So as I said, it's the flavor of the season, really, right?
So that comes to the next question.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things, even though it is the stories about three people, they are all connected to the electoral process in UP. In your case, because in this case, because the stories are set over there. Why do you say that the parties are not involved and everything? Like Pulwama was just before an election. The other stories of Kamal Agnay is before the UP elections, etc. Is the money also coming in from the electoral bonds? So isn't the whole thing actually, if you follow the money, isn't it coming from the political parties?
So I'll answer that question with an example, with what you refer to, right? And I keep saying this, that I don't think this phenomena should be confused or conflated with the BJP's electoral progress, because it's important to remember that this is a cultural sort of war. This is more in the realm of getting into the cultural space. May or may not have its repercussions on the political sphere. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, because a lot of it is being created, right? So we look at examples which tie into our sort of electoral systems, But this is a continuous process that is happening for 5 years, 365 days, 24/7. But UP elections 2021. I'm still writing the book, and I'm slated to visit UP. This is just weeks before the first phase of the campaign starts, and I've been following the campaign very, very closely from here. While I'm sitting in Mumbai, I never hear of this song at all, but as soon as I land in UP, again, it's on ringtones, it's on caller tunes, it's on public spaces, sometimes shops and stuff. This song, which is seeming to be everywhere, and it's simply called "जो राम को लाए हैं हम उनको लाएंगे, यूपी में फिर से हम भगवा लहराएंगे." Right? This song, and I sort of try and figure out. I said, who sung this song? Who is this pop star? Turns out he's a devotional singer in the north. He's very famous in Rajasthan and UP and so on, by the name of Kanhaiya Mittal. He has no political affiliations ostensibly. He's not a part of at least the BJP or any of the other organizations. Now he sings the song and he sort of records it and puts it out a couple of months before the election. The song becomes a viral success, astounding success, because by the time I see it, it's got some 6-7 million views on YouTube alone. Not counting any of the other audio streaming platforms and so on and so forth. Now, it's not the BJP which has made it viral, right, to answer your question. But what the BJP then does is, it sees that this guy is so popular and this song is everywhere. So the BJP quickly gets him on board. And within weeks of me landing in UP, I check his WhatsApp status, because now I'm connected with him on WhatsApp, I'm trying to meet him. And on his WhatsApp status, every single day, he's taking one private jet to one BJP rally, then taking another private jet to go to another part of the state. Sometimes he's going across states because there's elections in Punjab, in Uttarakhand, in UP. So he's flying to different states every day. And so maybe this is where the electoral balls come in, right? But not in the creation of the song itself, is my limited point. I mean, as I said, I don't think we need to, we should be conflating the creation of this pop culture with the BJP and the RSS. I think what has happened is there has been a fundamental shift in the way we are consuming, the identities that we're also living through, and stuff like this is appealing to people. I mean, so I think it's a fact that we need to encounter, and we need to sort of start accepting that this is not something that is thrust on people. This is people enjoying and people consuming it, and that I think tells you a lot about our society at this point.
One of the characters, Kabir Singh, is a woman. All the others are men. So on ground, is it a male masculinity thing? Because it seems very muscular and it's violent. And you said Ram and Shakti. What about the women of, half the population? What do they think of it?
So it's interesting. I mean, the Hindutva space, if you go to see, has had some women. You look at Uma Bharti, you look at Sadhvi Ratambara. They've had some, sort of women in crucial positions, but they've never been in positions of leadership, right? So they've always been figures who've had some following, but they've never really risen to the top per se. And that is exactly what I also find in Hindutva pop, where I see that it's mostly male dominated. It's mostly men who become a big part of the artists, the creators, the producers. But then there are people like Kavi, for instance, who do slip into the system in one form or the other. And that is honestly also what attracted me to Kavi's story, because in Kavi I saw this rare example of a woman who's entering that male-dominated space. Back then I remember when I was trying to look at all of the songs that were created, I could only find 2 women singers who were singing this kind of song, this kind of music, and making this kind of music. And Kavi was one of them. And there was another woman called Lakshmi Dubey, but her songs were very, very limited. She had just created a couple of songs. Except Kavi, for instance, was creating songs on everything. I told you about Pulwama. She's had a song on love jihad. She's had a song on how Muslim population is growing and growing. So there's a song on population control. So there's a song on every occasion. There's a song on Article 370, saying how ab Kashmir ki ghati mein Jai Shri Ram ke naare gunjenge. That is really the sort of crux of the song. So she's got songs on all of these occasions and all of these events in the Hindu right wing. But apart from her, there are still very, very few women. So what also happens is when women like Kavi enter the space, they have to take a very masculine stance on things. So, if you go back and see Kavi's videos, you'll see that Kavi dresses up like Narendra Modi. She will wear a kurta, she'll wear a pajama, she'll wear a Nehru jacket. Now she's wearing a dhoti more and more, and she wears a pagdi, right? So she dresses up like a man, and then she tells me that when she becomes Kavi Singh, which is when she gets into this costume, she feels like a man, So she feels like she has the power to go and slap, a guy who cuts her and then sort of walks away. The Pragya Thakur look, basically. So it's interesting. The gender question is very, very nuanced and very complicated, because she is a woman, but then she has to be much more masculine than she generally is to be able to fit into this sort of crowd.